Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Reset podcast for the working class. I am your host, Mr. Andre Allen Clay Bennett. Uh, Thanks for tuning in. We are streaming live tonight on Facebook on the Reset page and on YouTube on the Reset page. In case you happen to miss tonight's broadcast, you can always click on the resetonline.com. Just search that and it will take you directly to the YouTube page where you can subscribe, thumbs up, as we continue to try to build the audience, give out pertinent information and education. Tonight's show was inspired by events from last weekend. Uh, Both concerning, disheartening, with the killing of Rashad Brooks in Atlanta by the police. Um, on top of that report, we also learned of 3 black men found hung. I believe 2 in California. The other one, I don't remember the state, but also what went viral was a video of an altercation between a couple and Aurora, Illinois Department officers. Um, all of these things got people talking, commenting a lot on Facebook and the other platforms. But tonight's show, don't let this movement become a moment, sabotaging the message, is going to touch base on a lot of different things that have to do with this movement that seem to be undermining some of the progress that has been made. Tonight's show is a call-in show, 708-414-0849. Again, that number is 708-414-0849. Now, while all of the events, tragic events from last weekend, disheartening, we must keep up the fight. We have to keep up the fight. We must continue applying pressure to both law enforcement and our elected officials in order to get the justice that we seek as a people. This has been going on too long. Protests have erupted all over the country, all over the world, and we have to keep the fire burning. And we must not let anything or anyone sabotage the movement. We can't let that happen. Not when so much progress has been made, although it not be exactly where we want it to be. These protests, they're proven to spark some type of change in some of these cities and law enforcement departments around the country. Now, some of the cities I learned about have adopted some of these reform changes that many of the community activists, community leaders have presented to these law enforcement departments. One city in particular, Camden, New Jersey, they've adopted new police reforms. Minneapolis, Minnesota, of course, where all of this kicked off at with the protests for George Floyd. Seattle, Washington, um, they've adopted some new reforms. San Diego, Denver, Colorado, Gary, Indiana, and Somerville, Maryland. They've all adopted some type of reform to try to change the way they've been conducting police policy there. Um, for instance, in Camden, New Jersey, um, they've done a total and complete overhaul and reboot of the local police department, including throwing out their union contract, which seems to be a little stickler for when we're trying to seek justice against law enforcement for over abuse of power. In Minneapolis, they've banned chokeholds and the use of tear gas. Same thing in Seattle, Washington, where they've also banned chokeholds and the use of tear gas. And that's what most of these states, almost all of them have done. But in Denver, Colorado, not only have they banned tear gas and and chokeholds, but they've also banned the use of pepper spray, rubber bullets, and other projectiles at peaceful protesters. So we are seeing some type of change in some of these departments. And again, it's not the full change that we want to see. Some of these departments do need a complete overhaul. Some of these departments, unions get in the way of the justice that we seek. Now, controversy has come about regarding what police reform looks like. Um, After communicating with quite a few of my followers on Facebook and on YouTube, I decided to gather a list of some of those reform ideas that people may have. Um, and despite whether or not you agree with them or not, these are definitely being adopted across the country. And again, just to go down a list of some of the reforms that we're seeing, the renegotiating of union contracts. Again, this has been a stickler for citizens to be able to seek justice when the unions protect bad officers. Demilitarizing the police force. Whether you agree with it or not, some people believe that police departments having tanks and various other weapons of combat, war combat, is not necessary on the city streets of the United States. Another type of reform that has been suggested by various groups and community leaders is liability insurance, in which I touch base on in a previous podcast, making cops liable for the actions that they take out on the streets. Community law enforcement oversight committees. I think every department, every city should have these. The communities for which these law enforcement officers serve um, don't trust them, and therefore, oversight into the actions of police officers is necessary. I'm fully on board with something like that. Um, Higher hiring standards. Some folks have proposed that police officers not even be able to be hired unless they have a bachelor's degree. Also, psychology class. They should also engage in that as well, in that type of training, and it should be mandatory for every police officer, because quite a few of the incidents that we've seen with unarmed black people being killed by police, we learn later on that some of these victims have had mental illness of some sort or another. Um, Another type of reform that a lot of folks want to see is basically the real reprimanding, firing, convicting, and sentencing of cops that kill unarmed um, folks out there in the streets. But we haven't been seeing this type of justice, and I think that had we received that type of justice, you wouldn't see these protests today. Another suggestion is to place black cops in black communities where they are more familiar with the residents and or the surroundings. Oftentimes, officers of another race will come into impoverished black communities, and because they don't understand the residents there, they don't understand the culture there, they strong arm in a lot of ways and misunderstand the citizens that live there, and that's got to stop. That's just got to stop. There's no way the community is going to respect law enforcement as long as that continues. Also, training officers to de-escalate situations, as in the case of last weekend with Mr. Brooks, we saw um, how they could have probably handled the situation differently. Um, he was calm for the first 40 minutes of the interaction with law enforcement, and of course, as we all saw, things turn left when he went to resist, fight the police officers, snatch the taser and run. Although it was a non-lethal weapon, one of the officers decided to use his lethal weapon and gun that man down as he was fleeing. Two shots in the back, and Mr. Brooks is dead. So de-escalating situations is definitely needed in order for cops to effectively interact with the citizens that they are hired to serve and protect. Also, better training on use of force policies and practices. Oftentimes, um, people have reported that law enforcement officers just go from 0 to 10 too quick. And they, because they can legally get away with certain practices, take no, use no discretion and in their interactions with some citizens, and they go overboard with the use of force that they administer. So some of these things, again, they're needed. They're needed for the type of reform that is going to satisfy the rest of us. Um, Law enforcement has an obligation as they serve the community. Their jobs are not just to serve and protect the rich or even white America, is to serve and protect us all, regardless of race and regardless of income status. So, along with that, let me get into the sabotaging. And this is something that we've seen throughout the protest, some done by people who may have well intent, others have been done by folks who are more deliberate with it. Um, One such example of possibly good intent was when I saw the photo of the members of the House all wearing their kente cloths, kneeling, as a show of solidarity for the protest against police abuse and violence. I myself, I didn't appreciate that. Um, I prefer to see legislation, real legislation that actually speaks to the reform that we seek versus a photo op and symbolism. We don't need that. We don't need that at all. And it was actually pandering. And again, the protests on the streets, they speak to real solutions being needed, not just another uh, chance to be seen on TV and to be reported on, or to even make Trump or any other politician look bad. Our movement is a personal endeavor for us. It's not a political punching bag for folks to take a swipe at or basketball to shoot hoops with. This is serious business and lives are at stake, and something has to change. Another is example of the type of sabotaging, although maybe well intended, have also been by some of our white allies that have been caught spray painting Black Lives Matter on buildings and different structures, the vandalizing of different buildings and structures, and also some of the looting that we've seen. None of this helps the movement. None of this has anything to do with seeking real justice. In fact, what ends up happening is, despite some of these reports being shown on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever, the blame always comes back on Black people. And as I strolled through some of the comments and interacted with quite a few of the folks on my friends list on Facebook, I saw that for myself. Despite those reports, we were still being blamed. Um, Countless videos have surfaced over the last few weeks of non-Black people vandalizing, looting, destroying property. And again, For some, I understand that it's the intent is well, but ultimately, in the long run, in the big picture, these things don't help our movement. And so I would suggest you stop, please, because we this is serious business for our people. And if you're gonna be an ally, give us that support, march with us, um, reach out to and put pressure on elected officials and law enforcement with us. That's what we need. That's what we need. Um, Another thing that we've seen online are numerous videos of cops, law enforcement officers, abusing peaceful protesters. Um, we all know of the elderly white man who was pushed down by the police and who now suffers a brain injury as a result of it. Um, that's not helping us at all. That's sabotaging our movement. Abusing the protesters, that's not the way to go. And it's just going to increase the anger that's already out there concerning law enforcement. And it puts on display the audacity that some law enforcement officers have in spite of the justice that black people are seeking in this country and the reform that we're seeking. I think it's just the audacity of it is just unreal to me. um Black Lives Matter, the movement, is different than Black Lives Matter, the organization. And this is something that I've noticed that some non-black people are not able to make the distinction between the two. While I do appreciate, again, the support from our non-black counterparts, our non-black allies in this movement, we do need to educate them about what is what, about the difference between the movement and that organization. The organization itself, while it has participated in this movement, is not the leaders of this movement. The leaders of this movement are the people. The leaders of this movement are the citizens who are fed up with the abuse, the murders of young black men and women unarmed at the hands of law enforcement. And media, they tend to propagate some of this by not um, adding context to many of the reports that they do. And that's why independent reporting is so important nowadays. Another issue that we have that's sabotaging us is division among the races, most specifically between black and brown people, who both of us disproportionately are killed by law enforcement. In the last couple of weeks, we have seen reports of black and brown people um, at odds with one another. Um, and this can't happen. This can't continue to happen. Not when these white supremacists don't like either one of us. So going at each other, that's not helping. That's not helping the movement. That's not helping either of our races. We need to come together, bond together on both the socio-political arena and also economically. I think that we both want this to end. We both want justice. So we do need to stick together and work together to seek this justice and make sure that these reforms stay in place as well. So we got to work together, to make this happen. Another issue that I came across was apparently some non-black social media influencers are have decided to show their sense of solidarity with the movement by donning blackface. My question is, how the hell does that help too? It makes no sense. Um, while I, again, can appreciate the allyship from our non-black brothers and sisters across the country and around the world, You don't have to do anything extra to prove that you are on board with the movement. The best thing is to stay white faced or brown faced or whatever face you are. Do not, don't patronize this. Don't patronize this. It's insulting and it undermines the very serious reforms that we seek. This is not, that's not going to work for us. Um, I wanted to get into also a talk about the video that went viral from Aurora, Illinois, where we have a couple who, according to police, were allegedly fighting in a car when they addressed this couple. And the first footage of this encounter was actually that went viral was actually posted by a bystander who was driving by. And in that video, we see the young man is handcuffed. We see the young lady is on the ground with police officers on her, and she's behind the police vehicle. The young man is closer to the people who are recording this, and he's begging them to keep recording. And he goes on to state that the police have been abusive towards he and his girl, and that he and that they quote unquote choked her out. And this sparked all kinds of outrage. This sparked a number of community activists that I'm familiar with on a personal level to address again the mayor of Aurora and law enforcement. And subsequently, the next day, dash cam footage of the encounter was released. And it was during that encounter, during that watching that footage, is when it was revealed that law enforcement, while I still believe them to be uh, uh, um, a little too rough with them, the couple in itself were not very cooperative. And again, not that I agree with the way the police handled the situation, but at the same time, giving police a way to abuse you, a chance to abuse you, that's not helping. That's not helping you. That's not helping this movement. And for I think for some law enforcement, it justifies their prejudices against Black people. We have to be careful of that, and we can't cry wolf about issues, about interactions with law enforcement. We must seek real justice. We must seek real reform. Again, crying wolf, that's not helping our people. And we got to do better than that. We have to do better than that. I am proud of the community activists here and around the country for the pressure that they continue to put on. And it's not going to stop anytime soon. No time soon, nor should it. Nor should it. We have to keep on law enforcement. We have to keep on our elected officials. If our elected officials are not doing the jobs that we elected them to do, we must vote them out. They do not deserve the positions that we gave them. They don't deserve them at all. Not going to be on here too long tonight. I just basically wanted to kind of go over some of the issues that we've come across this weekend and the last few weeks concerning this protest. I just know that young people across the country are probably who inspire me the most about this protest. The young people of all the different races that continue to ally themselves and go at this thing head on. We have seen violence, we have seen destruction. And some would even argue that those were necessary evils in order to spark some type of change. And in some cases, as I mentioned, with the cities that have adopted some types of reform to their policies, police policies, some folks would suggest that this violence help make that happen. One thing for sure, I do believe that as a people, we need to learn what what we have the right to do and what we don't have the right to do. Assuming that we have the right to do one thing and then finding out later that maybe not, that can be a big surprise for those of us who have not taken the time to become educated about the law. But that is no excuse for police officers to continue the abuse, to continue the murders that we've seen of our people. So, with that being said, keep up the fight, keep the pressure on, and keep the fires lit. Not going to be on here long this evening, but anyone wants to call in, again, the number is 708-414-0849. Tonight, again, is a special broadcast of the Reset Podcast. Last weekend, we couldn't make it. But yeah, tonight, call in if you have any suggestions about police reforms, any thoughts about the sabotaging of the message that this movement keeps continues to push forward. Um, Other than that, we're gonna log off and continue on with the rest of the evening. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And next week we'll have a new show for you. And again, be sure to log on to theresetonline.com, which will take you to the YouTube page, where please click subscribe, thumbs up on the video, and more will be coming your way in the future. Thank you and good night, everybody.